So there's only one real challenge at the end of the day, in my opinion, or all challenges all revert back to one singular issue at the end of the day, which is leadership. Every problem you have in your organization comes down to leadership. So everything that we've ever had that hasn't gone right or isn't going right, or we're not executing as well as we want, or not getting the results we want, or having struggles or challenges, always comes down to leadership. Every problem you have is a leadership problem, whether you realize it or not.
Welcome to the How to Scale Commercial Real Estate Show. Whether you are an active or passive investor, we'll teach you how to scale your real estate investing business into something big.
Don Wenner is the founder and CEO of DLP Capital, a private real estate investment and financial services company focused on making an impact by acquiring, developing, and building relationships, housing leaders, and organizations. Don, welcome to the show.
Hey, pleasure. Thanks for having me on today.
Hey, man, absolutely. The pleasure's mine. There are 3 questions Don asks every guest who comes on the show in 90 seconds or less. Can you tell me, where did you start? Where are you now? And how did you get there?
Great question. So I started in Bethlehem, Pennsylvania, to two young parents who had me at 16 years old. I moved out of their home at 17 years old and went out on my own as a junior in high school. So humble beginnings. Mom ran a home daycare, 6 kids in my home, plus my 3 younger siblings at all times. And my dad was a prison guard. So those were the beginnings. Today, we have 300 plus corporate team members, 3.4 billion capital under management. We've impacted hundreds of thousands of lives, owned tens of thousands of units. We're a large lender and equity partner to other operators as well. Grown 60+% a year every year for 16 straight years, 10 years in a row. Is one of the 5,000 fastest growing companies in America. 4th last year out of any companies that made the list 5 times. We're on the list 10 straight years. We built a really consistent way of consistent growth, which is centered around discipline and really, really great people. So that's where we're at today.
Man, I love that. So you said you moved out when you were 17 years old and went out on your own. What was your next step? How did you get involved in real estate? I'm gonna ask you a whole bunch of questions.
Yeah, I got it.
How did you develop yourself? I mean, as a person, because there's a mindset shift that has to happen when you grow up in a working class and again, there's no problem with it. I grew up very not even blue collar. We grew up dirt poor. Yeah. But there's a mindset shift that has to happen when you go from humble beginnings to, hey, now we're running $1 billion company. How did it happen?
It's a big question. I'm going to try to keep it tight. But so so my dad told at my wedding, he gave a speech at my wedding when he knew I was an entrepreneur. And it was when I was in kindergarten, and he got a call from the school because I was selling little brown Hostess donuts to my classmates for 50 cents a piece. Right. And and so that continued all through my childhood. I mean, in middle school, I didn't cut lawns. I ran a lawn care business. I hired my friends. I had marketing and distribution, signed up lots of homes. So I just had this entrepreneurial desire at an early age. And my parents were the people who thought about everything as how do I save a penny instead of how do I make $1, right? And it was scraping and clawing. And I used to always find myself thinking, why don't you just work more, right? Why don't you do something else? Why don't you do something more, right? And so I don't know what instilled that at an early age. I'm a father of 3 young boys now. And so I spent a lot of time teaching them and focusing around 2 big things with them, grit and growth mindset. And I think those are things that can be taught and improved upon. But I was blessed that I was kind of born with a growth mindset, a mindset that, hey, if I'm willing to work hard enough and learn and ask questions, I can do anything, right? So when I was in middle school, a financial advisor came in. Let's tell you I got into real estate. Financial advisor came in. He showed this little chart. On his little chart he showed that financial advisors made more money than doctors, lawyers, accountants, all the jobs your parents tell you to become, right? And as an 8th grader, when this happened, what I took from his presentation, I don't know if this is what he actually said, but this is what I remember, was that to be great as a financial advisor, you have to be really entrepreneurial, self-starter, and you have to be great at math. And I was like, well, that's me, right? I was, perfect SAT score math. I was great math, and I'm very entrepreneurial, right? And I'm like, well, that's for me, right? So I started shadowing financial advisors in middle school and high school, and I knew that was what I was going to do. But like every other kid, I was told I had to go to college, and So I moved out of my parents' house as a junior in high school, waited tables to get through high school. I'd work swing shifts. I'd skip school kind of midday, work swing shifts, get through. But I, still had the determination I needed to go to college. Fortunate due to grades and SAT scores and such, I got nearly a full ride to Drexel University in Philadelphia, and they have the best co-op program in the country. You go to school half the time and school half the time. I did them both at the same time, but it's a really cool program where they set up these internships. I got to work at BlackRock. I got to work at Merrill Lynch, at McGladrey in Poland, which is the fifth biggest accounting firm in the country. I was studying finance, and so I got all these cool experiences. But I got my all my licenses the day I turned 18, and I could for insurance and Series 6, I think 65, and anyway, so I knew what I was going to do. And I kept waiting tables on the weekends. And this guy came into the restaurant I worked at. I was 19 years old, and he kept asking me to come work for him. And he wanted me to come work for him because if you ever worked at a restaurant, at least restaurants I'd work at, and this was a Texas Roadhouse at the time, they'd say, hey, whoever sells the most filet mignons tonight makes $50 or whatever, right? So everybody was eating filet mignon that night, right? So he kind of, he was a sales guy. He realized that I was, I had some basic sales skills, nothing great, right? But at least I, had a little bit of persuasion. So he convinced me to come work for him. Didn't really understand what it was. He told me it was security. It turned out it was ADT security. So my job consisted of, knocking on people's doors. And I became the number one sales rep in the country for ADT at 19 years old, 150,000 reps. All that tells you is I knocked on a whole lot of doors, and a lot of doors. I got a little better as I went going, but I knocked on a lot of doors. And he convinced me to come work for him by telling me I would make $2,000 a week if I came to work for him. At 19, that sounded pretty darn good. My first paycheck was $5,280, and then I was making $6,000 to $8,000 every 2 weeks from there. And so I think I'm doing so great. I'm making all this money. I'm still in college. I'm still, got my plan. And one day I'm sitting at his kitchen table, and he cuts me my check for the 2 weeks, whatever it was, $6,000 or something. And I see on the other side of the table a check for $17,000, a check for $20,000. I'm like, what's that about? And he says, that's my real estate business. So in addition, his name is Nathan Robinson. In addition to owning this security company, he was a real estate agent. And he, that night, he basically convinced me that if I wanted to get into real estate, I would do great at it. And I basically gave up sleep for about 3 weeks, took my classes online, took the exam, flew out to Scottsdale, Arizona the day I passed my exam, went to a marketing conference, came away from that conference with a marketing message of your home sold guaranteed or I'll buy it. And that was October 2006, the peak of the real estate market. So my marketing message was at a good time. People were motivated to sell, and I'd either help them sell their home or I'd step in and buy it. And that was never the plan, but so I started doing and flipping their home. And then, that built into all the things we do to this day. So complete mistake per se, but fell in love second I got into the business and kind of never turned back.
Man, that's really cool. I love that. All of that story is fun. I wish we had more time to hear some of the nuance to it, because it's stories like that you just go, man, like that's really cool, and it just shows the hustle and the grit, that it takes. I think that was that the word you used earlier?
Grit, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So it just shows what it takes, and then that grit is so much of that. You've written a book called Building an Elite Organization. Go from the shift of, all right, I'm out here doing it, to, and I know you kind of alluded to this early on when you said you started a lawn care company. You were out hiring other kids to come work for you and cut grass, but there's still a shift from that to building an elite organization, bringing in right team members, and effectively scaling your company. How did you learn how to do that?
Yeah, it's a great question. So, I was not afraid ever to hire. I don't think until you just said that right now, I never personally connected the dots between the lawn care side and hiring my friends but when I got into real estate, I was so busy. I'm in an office of 158 real estate agents, and I'm so busy running around. I realized I kind of learned this from the sales trainers, right? From 8 to 8, right? I got to be out selling, right? Everything else is a distraction, right? So 3 weeks into the business, I hired an agent who wasn't productive in my office to help me part-time. She was full-time by the end of the week. I had 3 assistants working for me by the third month in the business. So I wasn't afraid to kind of delegate and free myself up. And so I did that from early beginning. And then what happened was, after a few years of just hustling, I was the main salesperson driving, 90% of the business. I was driving all the strategy. I was, driving the engine forward. And while I'm doing all that, I'm reading a ton. So I've had a discipline of reading about 3 books a week for the last, 15 plus years. I mainly do it on Audible. but I read a lot and listen to lots of people. And then what was cool when I entered real estate, I realized, hey, there's 1.2 million real estate agents doing the same job, right? There's a small percentage of them doing that job well. So if I want to figure out how to do it well, all I have to do is talk to the people doing it well, right? There are people doing it well. So I took the mindset of give first, so I would go out and reach out to the top real estate agents in the country and offer them something of value, something I could teach them, which at the time was how to sell real estate on Craigslist for free. And they would let me come talk to them, and I'd show up there with 8 pages of questions. They want me to come show them this Craigslist gimmick or trick, right? In which I was selling a lot of homes for free on Craigslist, and I come with 8 pages of questions, right? And ask lots and lots of questions. And within, a number of months, people are inviting me into these inner circles, these, mastermind groups, right? And that's what the approach I took to everything. When I wanted to get into investing, I said, well, who out there is flipping homes effectively, right? And I reach out to them, call them, right? Go and talk to them, right? I've just had that pursuit that if I want to learn something, the information out, this is the information age, right? If you're willing to pursue knowledge, it's out there. So that's the approach I took. And then, so all the reading I'm doing, all the learning I'm doing, I'm hiring people. What I realized is I felt I had this great understanding of how to grow a business from all the learning and all the talking to people, but all the people in my company didn't, right? They weren't reading 3 books a week. They weren't, understanding all this. And so about 11 years ago, maybe now, I read a book that's on your shelf there, Traction, by my friend Gino Wickman. And I said, wow, this is great. This is the first book that actually kind of pulls it together into a system. And so I immediately became an implementer for Gino, just self-paced, kind of went through his program and implemented it into my organization. And it was so incredible that it gave that structure to how to grow a business. So I realized early on the importance of, of culture, the importance of hiring great people, the importance of developing leadership from listening to all these wonderful greats like John Maxwell and Jim Collins and so forth. And then reading that system helped put it into action. And then for us, what happened was that system wasn't enough. It's a great system to kind of get you going, take you from, a few people, maybe to 20, 30, 40 people and get your foundation built. And then for us, it wasn't enough as we really started growing. So we kind of took the basics of that and some ideas from the Vern Harnishes of the world and the Sean Coveys of the world and Jim Collins of the world. And we kind of built a lot of custom tools, and we built our own system, which we call the Elite Execution System, which is what I wrote a book on called Building Elite Organization that we run today, built the technology on, and teach to other developers and operators, help them implement and run their business on it today.
What do you feel like have been some of the greatest challenges that you've overcome inside of your own organization?
So there's only one real challenge at the end of the day, in my opinion, or all challenges all revert back to one singular issue at the end of the day, which is leadership. Every problem you have in your organization comes down to leadership. So everything that we've ever had that hasn't gone right or isn't going right, or we're not executing as well as we want, or not getting the results we want, or having struggles or challenges, always comes down to leadership. Every problem you have is a leadership problem, whether you realize it or not. So that's where I've put, for the last 10 years of my life, yes, I'm involved in raising capital, and we raise lots of capital, right? I'm involved in doing deals. I'm involved in operations. I drive the engine of a lot of the organization, even though we have 300 plus corporate team members. Yet, with all the things I'm involved in, the number 1 and number 2 allocation of my time for the last 10 years have been hiring leaders and developing leaders. So I spend well over half my time on out hiring. I average 6 to 8 interviews a week, have for 10 plus years. And I do 6 to 8 one-on-one meetings with my leaders a week, focusing on developing leadership, developing capacity, developing abilities to execute. So that's that level of dedication and discipline around hiring and developing of leadership, right, is not typical, I find, in most CEOs or leaders. But I've realized the importance of that, and that's the fundamental reason to how we've been able to have the sustained level of growth we've had through multiple cycles, launching many different business lines, et cetera, and sustain it has been not, I wouldn't say we've kept up with leadership to the growth of the organization, but we've been close to keeping up, right? So we're always feeling we're fighting to have enough quality leaders and have them at the place of leadership level, be able to keep up with the goals and direction of the organization, but it's a conscious, focused effort.
When you say, and I'm not sure I have the right question for this, but when you say developing leaders, meeting with your leaders, obviously, KPIs, things like that are important, but there's a lot of kind of soft skill in leadership that maybe can't be measured on a spreadsheet. There's interpersonal skills, there's things like that that are just, you just can't measure it. How are you effectively developing leaders? Like, what are things that you say, man, these are things when someone comes in our organization, that I really, when I onboard them, I want them to understand?
Yeah, it's a wonderful question. And so the best book on leadership that's ever been written, in my humble opinion, is called The 5 Levels of Leadership by John Maxwell. It's a classic. It's the best understanding of leadership. And John Maxwell himself has written 100 books on leadership. This is the best book. And so the way I think about it is most people, and if you haven't read the book, I won't go too deep in the weeds to people, but level 3 leadership is where most people never achieve, which is to be able to consistently generate and produce results with and through a team. And so I realized that in my organization that I have a lot of people who had leadership titles and some influence because of who they are, and they're great people and encouraging, great cheerleaders and so forth, but weren't able to consistently generate results. And so I spent, probably a couple years really evaluating all of our leaders internally and externally in terms of what are the things that great leaders do? What are those? And you said the kind of soft skills, the things that really make a difference. And so the first thing, backtrack just a quick second, that we do is every time we hire a leader or hire any person in the organization, we clearly identify before we even start searching for the person. But then once we hire them, we identify, we call it the RREK, which stands for role, responsibilities, expectations, and key numbers. So every person at DLP knows what the key numbers are, that they're responsible for, the KPIs, as you said, and they know exactly what the expectations are. My belief, especially the people we hire, but most people want to win, right? Most people want to do good, right? They want to be successful. But a lot of people in most organizations, especially entrepreneurial organizations, don't know what success is. It's never even been measured. So they don't even know what they're aiming for because no one's defined what success is for their job. So that's the first place that most organizations, most companies fall down. But once we've identified success, if they're not achieving success, they're not achieving their goals, we figure out why that is, right? Is it, hopefully it's not the case. This is a hiring issue. If it's a will issue, right? They're not willing to do the work, right? But if they have a skill issue, right? An ability issue, we've developed over, again, a couple of years, the 24 consistent practices of highly effective leaders. So some examples of those are, discipline and building habits. So they're struggling with keeping up with the whirlwind, right? They don't have the discipline and structure to their life, let alone their business, right? Do more than you ask for others, make hard decisions, have difficult conversation. We call alignment, being aligned. And we have a whole method around that. Listening, speaking simply and directly, coaching, teaching, follow through, buy-in, collaboration, emotional fortitude. Those are some of the examples. And we actually have people self-assess themselves against those. And we have then their leader assess them across those. And just by categorizing those things that a lot of would be considered soft skills, categorizing them in that way, and then be able to give clear feedback. It helps sometimes when you feel like, I don't know how to guide them on what they're doing wrong, right? When I can look at this list of 24 practices, I can see, hey, you're really been struggling with being able to critically think through an issue and be able to kind of lay out solutions, right? And give guidance on how to get better on that and how to improve and so forth. So yeah, it takes a lot of work and time, and you have to first care enough to do it, right? So I always tell people, the key in building a great organization is investing in your people, and you can't fake it, right? You can't fake it. You generally have to care, in order to really invest in your people and invest in them as a whole. And that's one of the other quick notes that we invest a lot in. So I believe one of our core values is called living fully. And I believe living fully is when you're achieving success and significance across all areas of your life. And we categorize life across 8 areas: faith, family, friends, freedom, fun, fulfillment, fitness, and finance. We have an assessment process. People can assess themselves, and we want to help people. The way I think about it simply is, if you worked in my organization, I want you to be a great father, a great husband, a great leader in your church, whatever the things that are important to you, as well as certainly being very productive in your work, right? But those aren't contradictory. We call it work-life integration. We want people who are successful in achieving their goals in all areas of life. And by investing in people as a whole, every person in our organization has a personal compass. They have a goal to what's their own core values, their mission, their family BHAG, what they want to accomplish in 100 years. And we help them, achieve their goals and connect what they really want to get out of life and have fulfillment and so forth. And so there's a couple notes on building leaders.
I love that. No, that's absolutely awesome. And I think that's a tough thing to tackle, a tough thing to, as you well know, building leaders inside of your organization. That's a lot of work, and it's a lot of planning and probably delayed gratification, I would even imagine, as you look at it and go, okay, yes, I'm going to invest this in you. And then it could be 2 or 3 years before we start to see fruit. But yet it is that constant cultivation of both culture and people, I think that has taken you to where you are today. Turn left a little bit in this conversation. You guys are involved in a whole suite of real estate investments, everything from, I think it was, maybe I misunderstood this, but build to rent communities to lending to direct development of multifamily properties. When you want to take on a new business line or a new asset class, how do you guys strategize around that, figure out the goal, and then bring on the people to do it? What's that process?
Yeah, it's a wonderful question. And we have, I'll throw this out there. So our domain, one of our domain that has information on the book, and a lot of these tools that I'm talking about, including the one I'm about to talk of, anybody can download for free, dlpelite.com, dlpelite.com. You can download this next tool and a lot of the other tools I talked about, which we call the Elite Compass. And so the compass is and the term for it, sort of in traction, they call it VTO. So it's sort of like that, but a lot more to it. And so we have very clear, big picture organization. What's our big, hairy, audacious goal? What's our purpose, our mission, our core values? Who's our core client? What's our secret weapon, as we call it? Clearly understanding who we are and who we serve. And then we go and we break that down then into what's our 3-year aim for the organization, and what's our 1-year bullseye. And then we break that down to what we're going to do in the next 90 days. So we've got this really clear direction to where we're going. And it's not just something that I know it or my senior leaders know, the whole organization knows it. We do a vision day every year that we invite all of not only our employees, but all of our investors, all of our operators to join us, where we lay out exactly where we're heading. So anytime we think about launching a new business line or a new product, we go and we filter it against the compass, and we say, hey, is this in line with our values, with our purpose, with our mission, with our big heritage goals? Is this going to help us get there, or is it going to be in conflict with where we're going? And then it's often a situation of, hey, we've got 10 different things we want to do. If we're going to add one thing in, what's going to be the most, advantageous thing to do? What's going to best fit with being able to serve our clients? And one of the things that's helped me as an entrepreneur, because there's lots of things I want to do, right? I have kind of 12 different business lines today that make up DLP Capital. But I have 50 that I'd like to own, right? And so one of the things that's helped me to avoid that is that I don't say no to things. I say not now, right? So I'm not ready to do it now because we only have 24 hours in a day. All my leaders are busy. We're all swamped. And that's the other big thing. When we launch a new business line, we don't go and set up a separate set of leadership. And no, we're going to use the same marketing department, the same IT department, the same legal department, the same HR department, same CFO, the same senior leadership team who's going to oversee this, which is what makes it possible. I have to have separate leadership teams and separate values and separate missions. It's impossible. Too often, I have real estate entrepreneurs who sit down with us on a day we do at DLP called Compass Day, where our members come in and we help them lay out the compass to the organization. I sit down with each of our members for a few hours and help them kind of lay out strategy. And I'll get operators sit down with me, and they have 10 employees today, and they have 7 business lines. They're in property management, they're construction management, and they're doing acquisitions, and they're raising capital, and they're launching a fund, and they're doing that in 2 markets. And they're telling me in the next year, they're going to add 5 more markets. And now they're also going to self-perform construction. And then they decided they're going to launch a plumbing company. And oh, by the way, we're thinking we're going to lend some money. And they have more businesses than they have employees, right? It's like, are you doing any of those businesses well now? Are you actually making any money in any of them? No, right? Why do you need, all these are big businesses. Why do you need to be in every chain, right? Don't let your back of house become front of the house, right? And try to do everything yourself. So that's kind of how we do it, but it's hard. It's hard as entrepreneurs.
That's well said. Certainly appreciate that. And thanks for taking the time to break down so many of your thoughts here, from leadership to how you guys have built an elite organization, the systems you've built. I've loved hearing your story from, starting selling, what was it, ding dongs or
donuts, Hostess donuts,
whatever. Yeah, that's a fun story. I love that. That's something they shut us down. I think I was in 3rd grade, 2nd grade. You remember those Jolly Rancher? They used to sell them in stick forms. Remember that? Yeah. So I used to sell Jolly Rancher sticks and the oatmeal cream pies in 2nd or 3rd grade, and I got the teacher shut us down. But that's funny. So I'm glad to hear somebody else also was in the. But you started much younger than I did, so well done. It's loads of fun. Don, thank you for taking the time to come on the show today. This has been an absolute pleasure having you on. I know you've mentioned a few different websites here and ways that our listeners can get in touch with you or learn more about your organization. But just one last time, so it's always in the same place in the show, what is the best way to do that?
The domain I mentioned earlier, where you can get all the free resources, dlpelite.com. Our main website is dlpcapital.com. You're welcome to find me on all social media. I have a podcast called Impact with Don Wenner, and my email is don@dlpcapital.com.
Fantastic. Don, thank you so much. Appreciate your time today.
I appreciate it, Sam.